Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about growing up in the 80s. I am a Gen Xer born and raised in the 70s, 80s, and teens into the 90s. But I sometimes think about the 80s and man, I wish I could go back and do it again, knowing what I know, of course. But let's talk about my favorite parts of the 80s. Let me know in the comments what are some of your favorite things that you remember about the 80s, pros and cons, and some of the bad things that we could have done without. Let me know. Looking forward to reading those. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so one of my favorite things, memories about the 80s is being a kid and being able to play outside and having the weekends where you like really made the most of your days off of school. You'd get up in the morning and you'd have your little bowl of cereal, whatever it might be. My favorite was like Cocoa Puffs and Captain Crunch. And you'd sit there for a few hours and you'd watch your favorite cartoons. And we had some amazing cartoons. And I think one of the things that gets me is like, that's what you look forward to as a kid. And I feel like cartoons are on all the time and kids don't have that same, oh, I'm excited it's Saturday morning cartoons. Like we had that excitement. Oh, Saturday morning cartoons. You had a small window and maybe on the weekdays before school, you got to watch some cartoons as well. But Saturday was special. That's when all the good cartoons came on, or sometimes even after school. Like we did have cartoons after school, a little small window there. But man, Saturday again was something special. You'd get your favorite little pillow and your little cereal. You'd lay on the floor and you'd eat your cereal and watch your cartoons. And we had some good ones. I think my favorites were like the Chipmunks, and I like Jem. She-Ra and He-Man were a couple of my favorites. The Smurfs, of course, everyone loved the Smurfs. Looney Tunes. I mean, we all love Looney Tunes, no matter how inappropriate they might seem today. Like nobody thought about those things as kids. They were just hilarious. So yeah, I loved some Saturday morning cartoons. Great memories. And then going outside and playing right after. Like you couldn't stay in the house all day. Your parents were like, no, get your butt outside. And we would run the streets and come in every once in a while, but don't come in too often because you didn't want to let the air out. And then you would just play and run and come in and eat and drink, go to the bathroom really quick and go back outside. And you were outside pretty much all day until the streetlights came on. And that was a real thing. Like until the streetlights came on, you knew it was time to go home. Unless you heard your parents calling you. Man, if you heard your parents calling you, you had to run no matter how far you were. And your parents' voice would be loud calling you through the street. So yeah, I mean, we had so much freedom. However, as a con, I wish kids could do that nowadays, like just go outside and play and you didn't really have to worry about too much. But on the flip side of that, we also didn't have cell phones. We didn't have connection with our kids. We didn't have like Apple tags we could put in their pockets, or our pockets. And kids have those things now. Like if you went missing as a kid in the 80s, you were just missing. Your best chance was a milk carton and an APB out to the police that this is what this kid looks like. This is where they were last seen, who they were seen with. Good luck. So I think definitely nowadays we have the pros of being connected to the kids all the time, tracking them down with like air tags. And that's really just a sad situation that we have to come to that to make sure our kids are safe. But really a lot of parents now, I mean, even as my kids were being raised, there's just a lot of crazies out there and you can't just let your kids run the street anymore. I mean, we had crazies. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I was almost kidnapped, like tracked down, followed, like a little old man tried to kidnap me right off the corner while I was walking to school. Crossing guard was right across the street. So, I mean, we did have some crazies out there, definitely. But I think maybe a little bit more so in certain areas nowadays. And that is just a sad realization. Like we had so much freedom, probably the last generation that really had a lot of that freedom to just go out and play and be free and experience the world. And that is super sad. Okay, and in school, we had something called the weekly reader. I don't know how many people remember this, but I just thought about it the other day, like how incredible that was, because we had to like sit in the classroom and read it. Everyone got a turn to read like a paragraph or whatever and share the news story. So they were teaching us to read about the news through the weekly reader, which was basically just a newspaper for kids. And man, you know, looking back on that as a kid, you didn't think about how special that was, but as an adult, I really look back at that and it's such a great memory and just kind of blows my mind. I don't know, do kids still get something like that in school today? Are they encouraged to read those little newspapers out loud in school today? And are they swayed? Because that would be sad. But yeah, it was a great memory, you know, that we had that available to us as kids. Like, I thought that was kind of cool, teaching us to read the newspaper and be aware of what's going on. And we had such amazing music back in the 80s, not only within the US, but also from UK came in and just added their own flavor. We got to witness the beginning of Whitney Houston. We got to witness Mariah Carey's, like when she entered the scene, oh my gosh, both of them blew us away. New Edition, we got to see the introduction from the 70s to the 80s of rap. You know, we had Run DMC and LL Cool J, and of course, can't forget NWA. We all listened to them. They were a little rough, and probably the main reason why those labels went on to our cassettes and vinyl and CDs later on. We had Annie Lennox and Depeche Mode and U2 and Duran Duran. We had so much great music, and it was meaningful. Like, even through into the 90s and maybe early 2000s, a lot of that music had a lot of meaning. Some of it was questionable, but most of it was so good. We were a little spoiled because we had great music and just so much between the pop and the R&B and the soul and the punk rock and the kind of new age and even the metal, like Metallica. I used to not be a metal fan, and I'm still but there are some metal bands from the 80s that just, you couldn't help it. You couldn't help it. And we're the generation that got to see MTV get started and UMTV Raps. We had the greatest music, hands down, or some of the greatest music. And we had video games. We got to see Atari come out, and you had the little, what was it, Pong, where you hit the little ball back and forth, and then you got bored and you went outside or did something else, were creative, played house or something. But I mean, Atari then became like Pitfall and other games, and then Nintendo came along. But the great thing about those things, the video games back in the 80s, is our lives were limited. You got like 3 lives, you might get a bonus life here or there. But when you died, there was no going back and saving your game and starting from where you died. You died, you started over. And eventually, that would get old. And you'd go, I'm good, and you'd go do something else. Maybe come back to it later and try again because you were just bored, there was nothing else to do. But video games were just, you know, you played them for fun for a little bit and then you walked away. And I think video games now, you play them and you get sucked into this whole story and building kingdoms and this and that. And that for me is kind of sad, because I think it's creating a different world for some kids, and stories that they just can't get out of, becoming part of the story. And a lot of kids are not wanting to go and experience anything else other than those games. And that to me is kind of sad. But I think our video games were superior because maybe the graphics were not that great, but you couldn't go back and keep living this story. You had to stop at some point. And that's where arcades came in sometimes too. Like, we got to play video games. Like, you'd get bored of whatever you had at home. I didn't have video games personally. My grandparents had video games at their house for the kids. But we didn't need limits or anything, but sometimes you can go hang out with friends, or your parents would take you to the arcades. So you got your little money and you got to go into an arcade and play these little games. But once the money was gone, that was it. You're done. But it was fun, for a little bit, not in the sun, not on the streets hanging out, but getting into an arcade and having fun, which was a lot of fun. However, the downside to that is sometimes the kids, we would go in on our own, just friends hanging out. And there's always weirdos trying to take advantage. So that became kind of a place for, you have to keep your eyes open and be very aware. So arcades were fun, but they had their downside too. And I don't know if it was just me. I grew up in LA and I lived right next door to one of our schools because we moved around a lot. But for a time being, we lived right next door to one of our schools. And me and my friends would go after school at like almost evening, and we would climb the fence and we would go play on the school grounds. Like that was a big deal. We'd get a ball out or go play hopscotch and just have fun running around the school grounds. And then we were done, climb the fence and go back home. Did anyone else do that? Did you play at school after school was over? Who else did that? Let me know. And lastly, and I'm probably forgetting a lot of things because there's great things from the 80s, just so many things. But some of the fashion, come on. Some of the fashion was kind of cool. Like we came up with some really cool stuff in the 80s. And it's still pulled into nowadays. Like a lot of kids want to go back and live in the old days, the retro look. But some of the fashion just is still around today. And man, it was amazing living in the 80s. There were some downsides. There were definitely some downsides, but man, we had so much fun. And again, we were like the last generation to really be able to experience life and go outside and do things and learn from our surroundings, and learn some common sense too, as you had to learn, some of the things on the fly. But man, we had a great childhood. We had a dangerous kind of childhood too, but it was a great one. Anyway, let me know in the comments, what were some of your favorite things about the 80s, growing up in the 80s? What were your pros, your cons? Let me know. I'm looking forward to reading the comments down below. I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.